Halo, it revolutionized how we play multiplayer first-person shooter games. If you recall, before Halo existed, multiplayer was sitting with three of your friends on a couch on a Saturday morning playing 007 GoldenEye and cheating by looking at your opponent's split screen. But when the Xbox and the Halo series came along, it brought with it Xbox Live, which allowed you to make friends across the country or even across the world if you wanted to. And with this revolutionary series, it brought with it many interesting characters. But at the end of the day, Halo is the story of Master Chief and Cortana. But what if we wanted to focus on other characters? What if we wanted to develop them further? I propose 5 Halo game titles that could be made that focus on other characters besides Master Chief and Cortana and allow you to flesh out the universe more. Now, I just want to say this. If this video ends up going viral and 343 Industries or Microsoft ends up finding out about my video and making video games based on my concepts, I want everyone to know you heard it here first. And Microsoft, if you are listening, I would not require continuous royalties. I would just want a check for $150,000 per game you release that are based on these ideas because they're going to happen. Now let's get started with the first one. They need to make a game called Halo Chronicles. Halo Chronicles would be divided into 4 sections. It would basically be a retelling of the events from Reach, Halo CE, Halo 2, and Halo 3, but all from the perspective of characters other than the Master Chief. Maybe the Reach section of Halo Chronicles would allow you to play as Blue Team and watch them fight their way through space stations and find out how the Master Chief ended up in cryostasis. You might even get to play as Captain Keyes and have to defend the Pillar of Autumn from waves of Covenant ships until Noble 6 brings Cortana aboard. For the Halo CE section of the game, this is where things would get very interesting. You might get to play as Melissa McKay or Major Silva, the ODSTs who fought the Covenant and later the Flood. You might even play as the Elites who discovered the Flood and accidentally released them in the containment facility. You might even get to play as Johnson, fighting against waves and waves of infection forms as Second Squad and Captain Keyes and all the Marines around you basically fall to the Flood. And speaking of Flood, you know that Private Wallace A. Jenkins got infected by the Flood but was still semi-conscious. Why not have a level based around him where you play as a Flood and your job is to infect all the Covenant on the ring as well as the Marines that are left behind? And then at the end of the Halo 1 section of the game, you might play as Johnson and show how he escaped the Halo ring and made it back home in one piece, just like what the Sergeant was asking him about at the beginning of Halo 2. Speaking of Halo 2, Halo 2 has a lot of interesting events it would have been nice to play as from a Covenant perspective. For example, the fall of High Charity. Picture this. You're an elite, and you wake up from your sleep to the sound of an explosion. You look out your window, and you see a human ship, the Amberclad, lodged into a skyscraper. You see the building on fire, and you see the news showing elites and brutes killing each other, as well as the Flood infecting everything in sight. And so your job as an elite is to gather a team of your fellow elites and a few grunts and maybe a couple of hunters and basically make a run for it and try to escape off High Charity. That would have been an interesting perspective to play as, something more along the lines of survival horror like Resident Evil 3. And speaking of the Amberclad and survival horror, what about when the Amberclad itself was taken over by the Flood? Imagine playing as a Marine and your job is to escape off of that ship before the Flood take it over. There would have been so many interesting perspectives that you could have played as in Halo Chronicles. The Halo 3 portion of Halo Chronicles would, for example, cover that space battle between Artis Vadim, aka Half-Jaws, and the brutes in outer space. We got to allude to that a little bit on the level of the Ark, but we never actually got to see it up close. It would have been nice to be able to see how that space battle transpired. And then at the end, you might play as the Arbiter as he fights his way back to Earth. So that's what could be included in Halo Chronicles. The second game that I recommend to be created is Halo Banished, where you play as Atriox. This is basically a prequel to Atriox's life, and it shows how he became the way that he is. It shows his motivations. Now, in terms of the gameplay mechanics, I believe that for this game, since you're playing as a brute, you should be playing as the best version of the brutes, which is the Halo 2 brute, which means that you are a damage sponge. You can go into Berserk mode as an armor ability, and in your Berserk mode, you can basically get 2 melee hits in one frame. You have very janky dodging mechanics. You can throw grenades across the map with pinpoint accuracy, and what's more, your melee has a disjointed hitbox which allows you to hit opponents that don't have a reasonable chance to react to your punches. You basically get to be a Halo 2 brute, but you're either playing as Atriox or one of his companions, and it shows their uprising against the elites. And now for the next game that I recommend, Halo Return. Halo Return would be the only Master Chief centric title on my recommendation list. For Halo the Return, this picks up at the end of Halo Infinite, because the end of Halo Infinite to me was a bit unclear. Did Master Chief go through that portal and travel back in time? Did he go to another universe? I don't know what happened there, but we can, for the sake of argument, say he went back in time. And now that he is back in time, he can go and stop Cortana from ever going rampant in the first place, which basically will remove the annoying version of Cortana from Halos 5 and Infinite and allow her to go back to her lovable Halo 3 version. Well, Halo 2 version, because the Halo 3 version wouldn't shut up while you were on the missions and kept taking over your screen and paralyzing you. So let's say that this allows Master Chief to undo all of the damage that was done by Cortana in the 343 titles of Halo. That's the last one that I would recommend to be Master Chief centric. The next title that I would recommend to be created would be called Halo Retribution. Halo Retribution would be the be-all, end-all, last event of the Halo universe. It would be the last title that covers new events in the Halo series. What you would see here is all the loose ends that both Bungie and 343 Industries introduced, and you can see all of those tie in together. You would use the Janus keys. You would find out what Cortana's latchkey discovery is. Basically, in this game, you would meet a precursor, not the first Gravemind. You would actually meet a pure-blood precursor. What you would find out in this game is that the Flood were a subset of precursors that decided to wage war against the Forerunners, and that there were some pure-blooded precursors who did not desiccate themselves into powder, who did not become Flood, and they had a civil war against the flooded precursors, and the purebloods basically lost and went into hiding. In this game, a precursor reappears and basically helps humanity find the actual cure to the Flood and rid the entire galaxy of the Flood once and for all. In this game, you get to meet Offensive Bias. You get to meet the Primordial and kill him. You get to actually get rid of every single Gravemind and Keymind in the entire galaxy. So by the end of this game, no more Halo rings, no more containment facilities, no more libraries. Speaking of libraries, the last title I would recommend to be created would be called Halo Genesis. Halo Genesis would be the prequel of prequels. You play as a Forerunner during the Forerunner Flood War, and you get to see the events that led up to the beginning of Halo CE, but from a more galactic perspective. You would actually see the rings being built. You would actually see the library being used as an actual library and not a torture test level full of infinitely respawning Flood. And that's a side note of something that really doesn't make sense to me about Halo, especially after the introduction of the Forerunners in Halo 4. Can you please explain to me how robots that have swords for arms and can teleport lost to some zombies that can slap you and jump really high? That doesn't make sense. Go ahead and figure that one out. But you would basically see all of the Forerunner infrastructures that you've played through in the original Halo games being built, and you get more story and more lore as to why they are being built. This game basically ends with the Forerunners activating the Halo rings and saving what's left of humanity. It would be like Reach on steroids. It would have a glorious middle part of the mission where you think you're about to win against the Flood, and then a somber ending where you have to sacrifice yourself to stop the Flood, just like when Noble Six died nobly, sacrificing himself against the Covenant. So these are my ideas of how you could create creative, interesting storylines that would breathe fresh life into the Halo series and deviate from the standard format of Chief and Cortana's story. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Go ahead, like, share, smash that subscribe button. Love to hear from you. Have a good day.